And welcome back. We are live and direct here on YouTube and on some pirated radio station out in Texas, perhaps. Last I heard. Thanks for being here. To all of you out there, wherever you are on this island Earth, much respect to those outside of America. And of course, those of you right here, right in front of me in this little window, in this little box. And I see little letters and see you out there. You guys are alive. You guys are well. Much respect to all of you. First time listeners, welcome aboard. I hope you stick around. This is going to be a fun one here tonight. It'll be a bit of a rattlesnake, as they say. Joining me in a moment will be Mr. Leo Zagami. Leo is a respected author, writer, and investigative journalist. He's been on this program before, and personally I have a lot of respect for Leo. I've read some of his books, and tonight he joins us once more. We're going to talk about his newest book, Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 8. From the Rise of the Antichrist to the Sound of the Devil and the Great Reset. Now, let's get down to brass taxes and bring in our guest for this evening, Mr. Leo Zagami. Always a honor and pleasure. Welcome back, Leo. How are you? Did we drop out? Is Leo gone? Did he fall asleep during the intro?
No, sorry, I forgot to put back the, and I'm back on.
I was like, oh no, I put him to sleep.
No. It's just that I have this mic I have to fiddle with. No worries. We are back on the air, and of course, thank you for having me on, Michael. It's always a pleasure, and I'm sure we can have a great chat today about this book that I'm about to promote on your show, which, as you know, it's
Right.
I think a discrete product of great research, and of course it took me ages to put it together, but it was worth it in the end. So I'm glad to be able able to present it for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for returning back to the program. And yes, it takes a long time to put together a book. For those that don't know that already, lots of research goes into this. And of course, we are, right around the holidays here. I can't believe it. This year has gone by so damn fast, Leo.
Yeah, another year here in America for me. This is now approaching my 4th year here, so it's definitely great to be here and not in Europe, especially.
Yeah, you don't want to be there.
I'm not going that well in Europe.
No, not at all. Thank the gods that you are here, Leo, not somewhere else.
Absolutely. That is something I always thank God every day. And as you know, I'm a believer, and I really try to thank Him, because it's almost a miracle I came out of
Right.
Italy without further problems. As you know, it wasn't easy to do my job over there, and
Not at all.
it was really difficult to keep on writing and exposing this great evil, which in Italy, unfortunately, as you know, has one of their biggest centers, which is in Rome, in the Vatican. But another big center for the propaganda of this infernal machine is Hollywood, which is the subject that we will be discussing instead today.
Right, we're going to talk about everything here. And of course, they are involved as well. The Vatican, we all know what's going on there. We all know about the pedophilia that's been going on there for the longest time. Satan lives within the corridors of the Vatican, Leo, as you know.
Well, absolutely, but not only. Yeah, I mean, the Vatican is the headquarters of the Jesuit. Let's say now the Jesuits have taken over the show there, but the Vatican is also reflective of the Sabbatean Frankist movement since the Second Vatican Council, when it was in a way corrupted and prepared to become the one world religion of the Antichrist. So there is various elements at work in the Vatican, and at the same time I touched, even in this book, I touched the subject of the Vatican, because in the post-conciliar days, after the Second Vatican Council, their attitude towards music gradually changed, until they fully embrace, guitars and singing in churches, up till the more recent Christotex, which I talk about in my book, which are churches where the priest DJs, which is incredible, but not really what you would expect from a Catholic mass.
Right, and of course, the last I heard from the Pope, he was wanting you to send money to the Ukraine, but that's a whole nother issue and a whole nother show here.
Well, actually, one thing.
Yes, sir.
I talk about Zelensky in this book.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, because of course of course, the guy is a comedian, an actor.
Well, that's true. Yes.
And then he also even participated in a music video where he was
dancing. Yeah.
Very much dancing in an openly flamboyant way.
Right.
I didn't really talk about that, but I focused more on Zelensky's appearance at the Grammy Awards, and also his involvement with the St. Stanislaw Masonic Order in Ukraine, which basically constitutes the backbone of the armed forces there and of the whole deep state of Ukraine. It's a Masonic order that the Russians tried to put down by more or less 10 years ago, trying to pass a law that will outlaw the Masonic associations. Of course, it didn't pass. And gradually we got up until the point of no return after the coup, the change of power in Ukraine and all that led to where we are now. The, of course, confrontation in Donbass from 2014 to 2022. But in my book, I focus on the way that Zelensky, the wife, appearing on Vogue, him on every possible show, even, like I said, the Grammy Awards, and he only says one thing. Actually, they only say one thing: money, money, money. Give us money, money, money.
Right.
and that is because they are, of course, part of this whole show that is really bringing us towards this great reset that I've, of course, described very well in Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 7. That came out earlier this year in February, and it was actually a very big success. A book in which I already talked about the war in Ukraine, and you have to count the fact that this book came out at the beginning of February,
Right.
so the war didn't even start yet. But I talk about that.
I was about to say that to you, Leo. I'm sorry to cut you off. I was going to say you've been ahead of a lot of us here in America, by the way. It's been pretty wild. A lot of things that you've talked about in the past are coming to fruition. And before I even get into any of that, I was just going to say Zelensky is named Times 2022 Person of the Year, which is remarkable to me. And that I'm just being, polite.
Well, but that's what I said. He's a product. I mean, he used to be a comedian. This show went on for a number of years where he was actually acting his part. He was the president of his country, just like he is now.
That's true. Good point.
And then from fiction to reality, they embrace this. But if we go back into the production company of that TV series, then we start finding all the connections that lead us all the way to George Soros. So he's a typical product of the system.
Definitely,
and,
yes.
That's how he acts. I mean, he's an actor and he acts very well his part. I mean, but it's incredible that this dramatic role they gave him is kind of going on and on and on, trying to convince us that we have to sacrifice everything for this pointless war, which is endangering, first of all, America and Europe, because this coming months are going to be very difficult for Europe.
Oh yes, it's all predictive programming, as you know yourself, Leo, and we're going to get into that here in a moment. But before we do, just for those that are brand new here, Leo, and who have never really heard of you, let's go through your background just for a few minutes, just to give everyone a little taste of Mr. Leo Zagami, because, you've lived a very interesting life, Leo. You've done a lot.
Well, as we don't have that much time, I just want to summarize it into... of course, I've been involved from very early age in secret societies, Freemasonry, the Illuminati, and so on. All this thanks to my family background within the European aristocracy and the royalty of Great Britain, of England, and also Scotland. And of course, all this brought me to have certain experiences. Then, of course, as you know, in 2006, I rejected all this and I became public with my website.
Right.
The website was my first step into realizing that really the way that we approach these subjects on the internet remains always superficial, because people don't have more than 1 page or 2 page maximum capacity of concentration when they are on the web. It's normal, you just go through an article and that's it, But when you're talking about this kind of subject, you have to really go deeper. At one point, from 2009 onwards, I started to publish books. And also I realized that on the internet, there were a lot of people doubting my credentials, doubting this, doubting that. There was hacker attacks on my website. There was this and that. I mean, there was a lot of sabotage attempts. And the only way to really show my credibility was, okay, I'm going to publish books that have documentation, credible sources, and not simply speculate. You see, the book that we are discussing today, there's no speculation. It's hard-proven facts. There's over 1,000 footnotes and citation from credible sources, academic, even mainstream, of course, newspapers and so on. But we have also secret documents and stuff, which is, of course, also proven to be accurate because I maybe show the document or I point out to the archives where they can go and, of course, find that document and confirm what I'm saying. I mean, everything is done also to shield myself from possible retaliation. You have to understand also that this book in particular is no longer the book that talks about, let's say, until Volume 7, I've been more or less staying in the boundaries of geopolitics and secret societies connected to it on various levels, think tanks, Masonic orders, paramasonic sects of various kinds. In this book here, I'm actually also involving big names in the music business, in the acting business, in the film directors, Hollywood establishment. So I needed to have credible sources and documents that could not be confuted in any way, because of course you are risking, otherwise it's a liability. You can risk to be sued. That's why every single phrase in this book is being calibrated in a way that you can't, you can't confute it, or you can't blame me, because these are, of course, already at times things that have been said, others that have not really been said on books that are very easy to find for the ordinary folk, others then research that is being conducted in archives like the Rockefeller Foundation archive or other archives of difficult access to the main people, I mean, to the people that maybe are outside the academic world. So it's a lot of work to put together a book that is bulletproof in this sense, and then, of course, bringing it out at the right time. Now, especially, as you know, there has been this big controversy with Kanye West, been a big controversy with Balenciaga, there's been a big controversy with Walt Disney, there's been a big controversy with Hollywood rejoicing, with Macron, and of course the First Lady of France and everybody going back to the White House after 4 years of Trump. They didn't, of course, like. And Hollywood was then back just a couple of days later, still at the White House, with George Clooney, the CEOs of all the various companies involved in Hollywood and in the streaming business. So I think that it's clear that the propaganda machine of Hollywood goes hand in hand with the power plot that is stabilizing the American dream, and that is basically installing the American woke nightmare, which we see reflected also in the movies, in the TV and all the rest. So in my book, I describe also socially how this happened, but then there is also an esoteric and occult element, because I go back into the history of Hollywood from the very foundation, 1909, 1910. So the very first movie ever shot in Hollywood, which was by D.W. Griffith, entitled In Old California. And later on, the D.W. Griffith story goes hand in hand with the Masonic evolution of Hollywood and all the people involved, including Charlie Chaplin, which he founded with United Artists. And I, of course, have the possibility of direct witnesses that I managed to meet during my lifetime. People that I was lucky enough to meet especially because of my father's background and of my grandmother's. My grandmother was Felicity Mason. I dedicated this book to her because she was very encouraging. She tried to make me study acting when I was very young, when I was 16 and stuff. Then I didn't really like it, but she was very encouraging then when I took on the music business, the media, and also aspiring music journalist. Later on, dedicated mostly to the music business, though, as a record producer and so on. And she was very encouraging always, but she was also the person that worked for Fellini, Zeffirelli, two great Italian film directors. She was trained by Michael Chekhov and met my grandfather when they were working in his acting studio, studying all the techniques that led to the Chekhov method. There is two methods of acting in Hollywood: Stanislavski and Chekhov method. These are the main methods of acting. And my grandmother was a great teacher, and she also appeared in some movies. I mean, to learn about the Michael Chekhov technique, well, I mean, it's a psychophysical approach that you have to acting. So it's not you go through training, which is very particular, very. I mean, I did it. I studied at the Trinity College in Dublin with Joanna White School of Theatre. My grandmother was also one of the teachers. So I studied very much. They use yoga techniques. They use respiration techniques. They use psychophysical techniques that make you identify like different parts of the body doing different things at the same time, and putting you layers upon layers to see how much you can take as an actor. It's kind of interesting, of course, but it wasn't my.
It's not for you, yeah.
No, well, I mean, I started already when I was. See, my grandmother. So I was very close to my grandmother. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, contrary to my brother or other people in my family. I kind of like latched on to her because she was very much always around the place, going around the world, and I was very much interested from a young age to have that kind of experience. When I was 12 years old, thanks to her, I came here to the U.S. She was a green card holder, and she was living in New York at the Dakota Building, by the way, where, as you know, they did the Rosemary Baby movie, where they did where John Lennon used to live. And she also had a house in Rhode Island, in Newport, and she knew, of course, all these people from Hollywood. At the time, you know, it wasn't overly political, the situation like it is now, but there was, of course, Ronald Reagan, who was in charge. And that was great because the 80s were really great here in America. And I remember visiting in 1982 for the first time. It was a great experience, and I stayed in New York for a month. Then I stayed a couple of months in Rhode Island, and it was altogether a great experience.
Oh yeah, but especially during that time.
Well, also because, like I say in my book, I was very young. I was very much interested in the media because my mother was already conducting a radio show in the Catholic radio station in Italy, and then in the Vatican TV even. She was basically doing that. So I was very passionate about the media, following her in the radio, and I became very, very interested in all this. And when I was 13, I actually was given my first radio show. So when I was only 13, I started broadcasting music.
That's wild.
Sunday night at 6 o'clock, I had my own show. And it came together like this, my career. I was about 10 years old. I was staying with this friend of my mother in this village where I was going to school. My mother wasn't around. She left us with her friend, this woman, who was very much devoted, Catholic. They were all very Catholic. This village was the whole scenario was very, very religious. But suddenly in the evening, this radio station organized a DJ evening with music, 80s style. I mean, it was dance music. And so it was a Catholic background, but suddenly there was all this music. And it was 1980, I remember. And I loved it. I really liked what I saw on stage, the DJs, this whole thing. And so I was serving Mass at the time, but I wasn't really convinced about it. And I went to the priest who was the owner of the radio station. And then he became, later on, the founder of SAT 2000, which is the Episcopal Conference of Italy Broadcasting TV, which is still in existence. So he's a very famous TV person now, this priest called Monsignor Mario Pieracci. And at the time, I went to Don Mario, who my mother used to do a show for her on the radio every Monday. And I went to him and I said, listen, I would like to have a show. At the time, I was actually reading because she brought me always to the radio, they use my voice sometimes for dubbing some fairy tales.
Oh, okay.
So I was like kind of already in, but I was doing it just, with reciting these fairy tales for kids at 10, I mean, I was 10 years old. But when I saw this DJing, I went to the priest and I said, listen, can I learn how to DJ? I want to DJ. No, I was a kid. I was 10 years old. I just did my first communion, I think. And he said, listen, I have a deal for you. If you serve Mass for me for 3 years, I will give you a radio show. But you have to come 2 or 3 times a week to serve Mass for me. I was like, whoa, man, that's okay. I was like, okay. I said, okay. So I became the head altar boy of this church, and I had to. So I went to so many masses, man. I guess they will last me for the rest of my life.
I know, right? Wow.
I was serving mass, which was very interesting because I even participated to the night. They made a nights for the Knights of Malta at one point, so it was very interesting experience to be serving mass even in such contests when you're very young.
Right.
I served mass for a long time. And then when I was 13, I went to the priest. I said, well, now you should, keep your word. Are you keeping your word? He said, yes, I'll give you this show. And I want you also to learn some things, he said, about the media, about how we work here. And he started to teach me tricks, like, for example, he will also call me to be a cameraman. They were filming the mass every day, and so they needed sometimes some background voices that were actually fake. They were pre-recorded to show that there were more people than there were in the church.
Oh, okay.
Or they were like, for example, the camera only positioned for the first 2 lines so you can make the church appear full. These kind of tricks,
I see.
Just like, and then on a Sunday, I had my first show. And this first show was broadcast in December 1983. And on the first show, I broadcast music, Italian, mainly English. It was the period of British invasion. I also played, I think I played also Africa Bambata. But what pissed off the bishop was when I played Frankie Goes to Hollywood Relax. That was it, man. The bishop was on the phone the day after.
So they kicked you out?
No, of course not, because, my mother was quite high in the Vatican because she was working as, doing her show and stuff. So, I was the son, plus I come from a very particular family. My grandfather was, had been a senator, my father. So we were kind of an influential family. They didn't want to mess too much up. And that was also a positive side of things, because I was always kept very far from pedophilia, which I could see around.
I was about to say, so they didn't mess with you then?
No, they will not mess with me, but they will mess with the poor kids.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I saw it. It was a bit sad to see that, but that was something that was going on, definitely. And a lot of people knew about it, but of course, they would. It was mostly these poorer.
The poor kids.
Yeah, that came from very bad families.
Oh,
and they
my.
would take advantage of that kind of. They will never, of course, do something.
And Leo, you saw that. Well, obviously you didn't see everything, but you saw them being led somewhere where that was occurring in your.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
goddamn.
Yeah, I mean, it was like they used to have these summer camps, and I never went to these summer camps, you see, and that's where it all happened. I never went to the summer camps because I was around with my grandmother, with my family in the summer. I wasn't a poor person that needed summer camps, and they preyed on those kind of kids.
Oh, okay.
I was pretty. I mean, I knew that was going on, but I was never really close. Yeah, okay. I saw maybe some things that could have happened, maybe, but the what went on really in the summer camps, that was, I think, really the bad thing. It's a little bit like the Boy Scout scandals. Idem. I never was part of the Boy Scouts. I did it for maybe one day, but then I saw that could be also placed. things like that went
And
on.
you were out after that, I would imagine.
Yeah, no. I kind of
Yikes.
like experienced the Boy Scouts maybe one day in England and one day in. But you have to understand, my family has also a very direct connection with the Boy Scouts. My great grandfather was the co-founder of the Boys and Girls
Oh, I
Club,
see. So
press club in Manchester,
I
and
see.
friend with
Okay.
the founder of the Boy Scout, the founder.
So they were
So,
contributors of that.
yeah.
But Leo, when you said this a moment ago about only the poor kids, that reminded me, and this might be completely off track here, but for whatever reason, the thought of Michael Jackson came into my mind, especially what he did or what was being accused of him at the time. Personally, I think he probably did touch a lot of kids, in my opinion, that were most likely poor.
You see, I didn't really touch on that subject because the subject I touch when it comes down to volume 8 is the subject of his murder and the interest around his murder, which led to a Masonic order, which is still in existence, an irregular Masonic order operating in Texas. And basically all this, it's of course, we can speculate on things, but remember that my book is based on facts. So for the first time, I actually brings enough facts on the table to make it interesting to not go into speculations. So
yeah, that's just a speculation on my part. Yeah. I'm not saying that's a fact, I know not for you, but there's other people out there that are going to listen to this, and they're big fans of Michael Jackson. And I made the mistake of talking about this once, and the emails didn't stop for a while. People were really pissed off at me, and so I'm just saying, no, I don't know for a fact that he did that, but I just sort of get that sort of impression. That's all. But I mean, no evidence here. I don't know.
Definitely, I explain in my book the weaknesses that, of course, brought him to put himself in the hands of that Conrad Murray, who turned out to be a member of an irregular Masonic obedience founded in 1921, formerly known as the United Most Worship or King Solomon Grand Lodge of Ancient and Separate Freemason. And this irregular form of Freemasonry is, of course, dismissed by the regular Freemasons later on as being, this is just some irregular people pretending to be Mason. No, the thing is this, that these irregular bodies is where actually you find that things happen, because these irregular bodies are usually, there is also regular Masons that belong to them, but they are more open to do things that can be a little bit more, how can I explain? They are more prone to deal with illegality and with crime, okay? Because they are not the classic official form of Freemasonry that you find at the entrance of your town with the label, here is the temple and here is the thing, in every town in America. No, there is some schismatic bodies. This happens very much also in Italy, where basically the real mafia is controlled by regular Freemasonry. So, I mean, this is the kind of level of criminality there. I don't say that the disobedience was particularly criminal, but definitely they have some contacts. And I was able to, with, of course, evidence and citation, the proper sources, come down to the conclusion that definitely they helped Conrad Murray also coming out of, because, the guy was out of prison after a couple of years. He got away with murder. So, that's not an easy thing. No. Now, the interest around I was more interested, rather than the figure Michael Jackson, I was more interested for my book on the interest around Michael Jackson, and especially his Beatles interest, the fact that he had acquired
the catalog,
Yes, and he did it also in a way that pissed off Paul McCartney.
Right.
Which is also a very powerful figure within the Illuminati. In the music business.
Yes, he really took it to him for whatever reason.
What do you mean?
Well, they had this sort of back and forth. They had this banter before he even bought the catalog. He had I told him that he was going to do it.
Basically, yeah, he has said to Michael Jackson, listen, we can buy it together. And then after, Michael Jackson went on and bought it on his own. So, of course, this is already the start of a beef between the two.
Right.
And
sneaky.
And, it was sneaky. And then there was another. Okay. There is three elements here at play. There is Apple Computers, which starts a legal argument with Apple record label of the Beatles, and that is one legal point. Okay, so Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak start Apple, and at that point they go and have they are fronted by the fact that they have, of course, taken a name which was used before by the Beatles for the record label. At the same time, the Beatles probably sold out all their publishing because at that time, that's what a lot of groups did for very little money. Then probably they regretted, and probably Paul McCartney wanted to reacquire it. Paul McCartney, though, and the Beatles are not these saints. I talk extensively in my book about them, and I describe how they created this fake dichotomy between the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, making them look like one was the angels and the other ones were the devils. Well, which is not really the case. There was an artificial, let's say, in my book, I explain how from 100 years ago, passing through the First and Second World War, and later after the Second World War, they started to push music of a certain kind to also colonize culturally the countries with Anglo-Saxon music. And the people, one of the main figures who created the figure of the rock star, that, I mean, in the 50s, they pioneered everything really. But in the years before that, they also pioneered the very foundation of these companies. I mean, people don't know that RCA was a company working for the military industrial complex, just as EMI. So you have an idea that these record labels just appeared out of nowhere. That's not the case.
Right. Yeah, these were funded heavily.
And in my book, thanks to the work of research that I did in various archives and stuff, in the end, I demonstrate how the Rockefeller Foundation, the system that was around the CFR, and all these, basically these powerful groups, the Round Table before that, Cecil Rhodes, and everything that then, you know, the Rothschild before that, of course, the Rothschild also helped financing Rockefeller. But then Rockefeller, it's not only, we think about Rockefeller, we don't really identify the wealth of Rockefeller in the sense of what this wealth has created in America and what kind of manipulation game it has created. We just think, Rockefeller. Well, every year we celebrate the Christmas tree in New York in front of the,
Right, yeah. No one really thinks about that too much. You're right.
And nobody thinks. It's just normal. It's all part of the show. But then when you go into the study of it, like I do in my book, you see that of course, the Rothschild in the 1870s later on helped creating literally the Rockefeller family, then went on to become a really important asset of this new world order. They went on later on funding the Rockefeller Foundation. They went on also, though, working with the military industrial complex very closely to then deliver the very basis of what will become then the first TV networks. They will all be generated. And then let's not forget, Rockefeller is not only Standard Oil, it's also Chase Manhattan Bank. It's also the banking system. Then you have the birth of the Federal Reserve. All this basically brings you to a manipulation that was carefully, one thing at the time. They produced the American dream of the 1950s that followed the war. It was artificially constructed. But also in my book, I explain how the military industrial complex entered Hollywood already from 1915, from the first film produced with their support, which was Birth of a Nation of D.W. Griffith, which I mentioned earlier on. And then later on, between the 30s and the 40s, they literally establish a full-on office. Still nowadays, you have a Pentagon office in Hollywood, and a guy that basically works with this entertainment business. That he actually is a guy that basically functions as a trade union, no? Between Hollywood and the Pentagon, and then the Pentagon guys who maybe want to do movies and need some kind of military support because they want to maybe use tanks, airplanes,
Right, yeah.
they want to film in air bases, they want to do, it's always fashionable. I mean,
it's all propaganda, and people don't understand that. They are all new to this.
Was what I wanted to say. I
read your mind.
Yeah, it's just like the propaganda that planted itself in Hollywood with the military-industrial complex created a genre of movies which is basically the war films, which are very popular. You know, they and like you said, that people take them for granted, like this is just entertainment. No. This is being carefully crafted all along.
All for a purpose, yes. The CIA has controlled everything in the media, the film industry, tech industry, the government, and of course on Twitter, as you just saw by Elon Musk exposing all that, the Twitter files about the FBI, the CIA controlling the narrative as they've always done before. I mean, it just took a long time for, normal, regular folks that don't think about these sort of things to fully grasp the idea.
Okay, in my book,
yes, sir,
I talk about how the government force has shaped literally Hollywood films. There is FOIA documents that, of course, have been released. I must say, in truth, there is very little access to documents about this subject because the Freedom of Information Act is regularly refused by the people in the Pentagon, who make you have very little access. In fact, I talk about the big difficulty that researchers have had in these years. But in the end, they have proven that hundreds of movies have been literally edited, crafted, molded by the military-industrial complex, who has decided at times to omit one thing or add another one. The group is called Entertainment Liaison Offices, ELO. It was established officially in 1948 under the authority of Donald D. Burke. He died in 1997. He was followed by another gentleman called Phil Straub. In the book, I actually show an image of Phil Straub watching in the war of his office all these movies that he has helped, or the gentleman prior to him has helped putting together for the military-industrial complex in Hollywood. And today, the current head of the Entertainment Liaison Office in Hollywood is called David Evans, and I talk about all his story in my book. So as you can see, this is journalism. This is serious journalism. It's no conspiracy theory. It's no rubbish. This is facts, not fiction. That's why my book is going very well. I've been publishing it first in Italy, where it reached different charts in Italy. Film and video #1 in Amazon, and then other charts now. But it came out 2 weeks before the English version. Then now the English version is on sale.
Nice.
And people can purchase it. And thanks to my wife, we created with 6 months of work, and it was really hard work because it's a 700 pages book, an identical book in English and Italian. Identical meaning to every single footnote. But remember, the citations rules are different. The language is different. But you will not notice anything. If you go rather to the Italian or the English version, they don't look, they are translated. And they are perfect. so it's been a very hard job. And
of course, yes.
I tell you one thing. I usually do a book either in Italian, either in English. I never do, when I do my book projects, I have never wanted to do something like this because I didn't think I could actually do it. And it was a lot of work. We started in June, June. I think around May we really started to put it together, And then we went along until November when we released it. End of November, now December for the English version.
Very
so
nice.
it's very. But like I was saying, thanks to the research conducted with credible sources and other things, this book is a way for us. Because I like to think of myself as the common folk. I don't like to think of myself as an academic. I like to think of us. We are the info warriors. These academics, they are all part of the problem.
In other words, you're a man of the people. In other words,
I like that because these academics are instead enslaved by the system, and that's why these archives are seldomly open outside of these leftist circles, and you can never really have a look at everything that's going on. Right. So I'm very happy that I was able, thanks to all the work that we did, and also the people that I've encountered in Hollywood, because my research for this book started in 2014. And it started when, for the first time, I came to visit California. I stayed for 3 months, approximately 3 months, in Long Beach, but I used to go in and out of Hollywood every day because Sean Stone at the time invited me to go and meet a lot of people there, film producers, musicians, people, various Freemason, people, various secret society. He wanted me to have an idea of what was really going on in Hollywood, so I could really understand and write a book that was credible. And I managed to put out a booklet, let's say in Italy, of a couple of 100 pages based on my experience in 2015. And then I kind of like left the project. I thought, okay, I'm going to pick it up again later on. And when I came here, I was able, of course, to have further contact with people in Hollywood, people also Palm Springs. It's really a place that has many links.
Has a lot of history, Leo. So, actually, I'm not even surprised that you are out there. There's so much that town, that city has such a history.
Absolutely.
And, oh, yes, and Sinatra's house is there, too.
Absolutely, thanks Sinatra, Liberace, Elvis Presley stayed there, also Liberace's place after. We're talking about definitely a city which had a link that was direct with the film studios like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer because of the 2-hour rule that they had to be in and out of Hollywood the maximum in 2 hours, and they couldn't really go and have holidays further than this. Palm Springs was like the limit on the highway.
Right.
So it created a colony of artists, and at the same time it became also a place where they were filming regularly films, then later on TV series, I Love Lucy, for example. For me, being here has been the perfect place, like I described in the introduction of the book. This has definitely been the perfect place to finally come and say, I can understand the food system and I can now deliver it on a book so that people can really have a real glimpse of what is going on, not just a sense of it, a real view, no?
Right.
Finally, they can see, wow. And it's like, my friend Roseanne Barr, for example, has helped me out very much.
Oh, yeah. What's going on with Roseanne Barr, by the way? I mean, the last time I saw her, she was on your show, and then...
Yes, no, Roseanne
she's gone.
She's been sick.
She's been sick.
Problem with her since she was a little bit unwell, and so with COVID and stuff, I guess that she had some problems.
Oh, that's not good to hear.
That is something that she's recovering. I think that she's doing great now, but she's more interested in her grandsons and her new place that she has bought down in Texas, I think.
Oh, yeah. So she's done with the whole audio thing.
Sorry?
So she's done with doing a show, in other words.
at the moment, I don't think she's very much interested in doing shows. She's very much more interested in
Being with her
living,
family, yeah. I
being
see.
with the family, especially, when I think you evaluate the things differently when you're not well or you have some problems.
Oh, yeah, of course, Once that happens, things play out a little differently the way you normally handle your life.
Yeah, I heard that she was about to do, maybe she told me she wanted to do something with Tucker Carlson. They were doing something with Tucker Carlson.
Oh, okay.
soon.
Interesting.
But I'm not sure now how that is developing. And I've been busy, really. When I say busy, when I say 6 months of work, when I do my work, I really reach out very rarely to anybody. And so I kind of isolate myself because it's the only way you can really get all this together.
Yes.
But I must thank people like Rosanna also, because they definitely make me understand a lot of things about Hollywood, about the Sabbatean Frankists operating in Hollywood. And it was thanks to her, but also other members of the Jewish community that have helped me very much out in defining, because you see, this is a moment in which we really need to clarify the position of the heretics within Judaism before this anti-Semitic rants, Kanye West style, go on and ruin everything for everybody.
So you're saying you don't love Hitler?
Well, absolutely. Adolf Hitler was a producer of the Sabbatean Frankists. There is
that was a joke, by the way, but I'm sure you got it.
But I just want to tell you, in volume 7 of my Confessions, I have the testimony of a rabbi about the ritual which was devised. Let's not forget, Adolf Hitler was Jewish, but he was a Sabbatean Frankist. His family comes from Sabbatean Frankist background. They actually did a ritual so they could copulate and create him, incarnating a specific demonic spirit. I mean, this is serious, sick stuff.
Right.
So when people say, I like it, yeah, but who was Adolf Hitler? Adolf Hitler was a Sabbatean Frankist, and it's Rabbi Antelman who says it, not me. I mean, I refer to rabbis who have very much knowledge, Orthodox rabbis, who are giving me the possibility to really understand how things are in the Jewish community and how, and through different people I met, I always had a sense, very good sense of trying to understand the Jewish people, because I have also Jewish blood, even if I'm born in a Catholic background and all the rest. I have Jewish blood, minimum, not much. It was actually kind of a rarity, but they came into our family because they adopted a Jewish person. So
I didn't know that about you, Leo. I had no clue.
Yes, so I have a Jewish blood, and so basically, like my wife has Jewish blood too. So both Ashkenazi, Jewish blood, and so we sense this growing anti-Semitism and think that is unjust. Of course, we could ignore it, but we don't want to ignore it, because here we have to go back to the very roots of Hollywood, like I explain in my book, to learn that the Sabbatean Frankists created their own playground of propaganda in Hollywood. I don't know if you ever studied the Sabbatean Frankist heresy. People who are listening to us probably don't know what we're talking about, so just to refresh their minds. A gentleman called Sabbatai Zevi proclaimed himself to be the Messiah. Later on, he was living in Turkey, in present-day Turkey, and the Sultan forced him to convert to Islam. But then, from that moment onwards, the movement he created became a crypto-Jewish movement, in the sense that they will keep everything from the outside world by converting outwards in other religions. They found a new solution. Let's convert outwards as Muslims, later on as Catholics, with Jacob Frank, who then claimed to be the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi the century after that. And then Jacob Frank, his cousin, became a very important person in the foundation of the Golden Rose Croix. Another Sabbatean Frankist became Max Theon, inspired Madame Blavatsky, that then later on founded the Theosophical Society. Pascal Beverly Randolph was inspired by Sabbatean funky stuff. I mean, you just need to go and study the work of some people from the OTO, and you see that basically they come from Sabbatean Frankism, and so even Crowley was in a way a product of Sabbatean Frankist, even if Thelema, of course, is later on its own creation, and that's where Hollywood becomes also the way he can push his new philosophy, which is the philosophy of the Antichrist, do what thou wilt. And that becomes the philosophy of the roaring 20s Hollywood Babylon. And I explain in my book how Hollywood Babylon comes to life. It's not actually Kenneth Anger that creates, of course, a couple of books with that name, exposing a lot of this crazy world of Hollywood for the first time. But it is D.W. Griffith in his film Intolerance, which had this incredible Babylonian scenography reconstructed for the first time in what used to be still a dirt road, Hollywood Boulevard. And then that scenography stayed there for at least 15 years before they removed it. So it became the basis of Hollywood. And later on, like I explained in my book, in 2001, the whole scenography was reconstructed for the shopping mall next to the Kodak Theater, then the Dolby Theater, where they give the Oscars, where you see Enki, where you see the gates of Ishtar, you see basically the elephants of Ishtar, you have the Great Gate of Babylon. All that is reconstructed from the film, from the Babylonian episode in the film Intolerance of D.W. Griffith. So, and then, of course, in the 30s, 40s, Crowley's Lodge of the OTO started to go very well. It was there that they actually did the first Gnostic Mass ever. It wasn't in London that Crowley did the first Gnostic Mass. Actually, it was his disciples who did the Mass in Hollywood, and it happened at 1746 Winona Boulevard, a side street of the well-known Hollywood Boulevard. And it happened in March 1933. And that's where they, for the first time, they celebrated the very, very first Gnostic Mass of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which, as you know, was created by Aleister Crowley,
right.
a peculiar brand of Gnosticism. He had devised this Mass actually in Moscow a few years before. He had devised, he was inspired by the Orthodox Church and the way they were celebrating Mass to pick up certain elements. Of course, he had the naked woman on the altar, so it's a little bit different. But right. I mean, it comes in with, of course, his whole sexual interpretation of Christianity, of all the elements of Christianity that have this so-called Hermetic interpretation, of course, typical of the Gnostics, but he brought it one step further. And this Mass was never really represented until they decided for the first time to do it in Hollywood. And later on, of course, it will become a classic Mass of the OTO in all the lodges and all the encampments and oases, which are the various groups that the OTO is divided in. When you have less people in the OTO, you have, I think it's a modest encampment, or then you have an oasis, then you have a lodge kind of thing. I think there is various stages of how many you are in. It's a little bit like Freemason. In Freemason, in reality, the lodge needs at least 7 master masons, but you can create a triangle, which is the basis of a lodge, with 3 free master masons, as long as there is one for each light to light in the lodge. And so I describe in this book all the history of Freemasonry in Hollywood, the lodge, also the temple in North Hollywood. I mean, people, for example, they always think where this, John Wayne was a Freemason, this other guy was a Freemason, but they never really tell you which lodges they were part of.
Well, that's true.
And I said in my book, I give you that. I give you the names. You can go and visit the temples. You can go and check them out from outside. If you can't go, you'll get in. And so you have a little bit more, how you say, now, North Hollywood Lodge 542, for example, and the importance of this lodge, in which there were all kinds of people from the show business that were very important in Hollywood, Clark Gable, John Wayne, Warner Brothers. I mean, I like to give names. I like to give places. I like to make my book a different book from the garbage which is out there based on
Absolutely,
supposed
yeah.
Hollywood, the Illuminati, and all that. This
Right.
gives you the actual reality of it. Some of it very disturbing, because when it goes into the realm of Satanism with Anton LaVey, with Kenneth Anger, it becomes also very disturbing.
We have a photo of Anton LaVey right now in the chat room. I'm not sure if you can see that right now for yourself, but there he is doing that interview there, and next to him is Hillary Clinton as Baphomet, or Baphomet, however you want to pronounce that. But yes, for those just joining us right now here in real time as we are live, Leo is with us here, Mr. Leo Zagami, a respect author and writer, investigative journalist, and of course we are talking about his newest book, Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 8, From the Rise of the Antichrist to the Sound of the Devil and the Great Reset. And we are right around the holidays. This is a great time to get this book for someone. If you know anyone interested in all of these things that we're talking about, I would appreciate the book if someone bought it for me. I haven't read the book yet, Leo, but I have read your previous work, and I like all your previous books. Of course, the whole Cyber Satan thing, that's something I've talked about here before, and it's all coming to fruition. These are all things that we've talked about in the past, and Leo, now we're starting to see all these things happen. All these various agendas.
Because, as you know, I started to publish these books. Actually, I published them for the first time in Japan, the whole Confession series in 2009. I started to publish books in Japan. Then I started to publish them in Italian in 2012, where it created quite a stir. And it started to put pressure on me from that moment onwards, because that's really what led me in the end to abandon Italy. And the Vatican had even offered me money to not publish them.
Really?
Yes, I have my wife as a witness, because they contacted me, and when they couldn't convince me, they even sent some gypsies stealing my computers in my home, the home of my mother.
Yikes.
So it was pretty serious stuff what they were trying to do.
And yeah, but by the way, Leo, for those who don't know, right now would be a good time to answer this question, because I'm sure a lot of people are probably wondering at home. They're probably saying, why did you leave your home country? I know there's some controversy surrounding that.
But just to complete, in 2015,
yes,
I started to publish, 2014-15, the books finally in the English language. And I have to thank the son of Oliver Stone, Sean Stone, because he found for me the publisher and convinced them that it was the right time to bring out my books in the English language. So I have to also thank Hollywood, maybe one of the few people in Hollywood that seems to be thinking out of the box.
It's a bit of a curse, yes.
Yes. I had to leave Italy in 2019, as I also explained in volume 4 of my Confessions. And later on, I reiterate in various points of my books. Mainly, we were threatened. There was a lawsuit regarding volume 1 of my Confessions. A Grand Master and a Sovereign Commander of one of these irregular Masonic rites, like I said earlier on, they are dangerous at times, connected with the mafia. In this case, the Calabrese mafia, the 'Ndrangheta. They were strong enough to get me to basically be sentenced, and I knew that I will be taking my passport and I will never be able to leave Italy again if I didn't leave the country before June. The sentence arrived on the 6th of June, I think. And then at that point, of course, I wrote a reply from my website to the Italian government. I asked the Italian president to look into this matter, because I thought that this was a great injustice. It is an injustice, but I understand that even the Italian president is a mafioso, he's from Sicily, so that's it. I can't really hope for anything from the Italian Republic, so I changed my citizenship at this point. If I want to continue doing, you see, in Italy we have different laws. You can be arrested. There is not only a civil suit, it's a criminal suit for what you write in your books or in your articles. That's why journalists get arrested. That's why Italy is number 50 in the freedom of speech chart for journalists. I mean, it's like a third world country. If you go and check the Professional Journalists Association, the charts about the freedom of expression and speech countries, Italy is down to number 50 something with third world countries in Africa and things like that. I mean, it's like a banana republic. You can't talk bad about the Pope. You can't talk bad about the president. There is a local vilipendio order. If you talk bad about the president, you risk 7 years of jail.
I don't blame you for getting out of there.
I mean, it's like a fascist state. I mean, the laws, you see, what they did is during the Second World War, the Freemasons that were sent abroad because Mussolini was persecuting the Freemasons, they went abroad and they said that we will use the fascist laws once Mussolini is defeated. We will keep those fascist laws and use them against the people who oppose our tyranny. And these were the leftists that are in power since then and have control of the judiciary. But the problem is that on top of that, there is also the mafia element. They are in bed with Freemasonry and they, of course, control also the system. So it's corruption. We see it also, of course, here in America. This kind of corruption is growing even here in the States. But definitely it's different from how I experienced it in Italy, because there it was also a threat to my wife, who is American, who was really astonished about what they were doing to us. Police arriving at our door at 9 o'clock for a Facebook post, breaking the door down for a Facebook post, investigating me for simply for doing my job as a journalist, writing articles, doing this. So this is what's happening, and so I'm glad that you brought this up, so people get the idea of the sacrifice of people who really are, sacrificing everything for what they believe in, which is the freedom of speech and expression and the possibility to expose this new world order.
And Leo, your family's okay though, right? No one's gone after them or anything.
My brother is very much with the new government. His best friend is one of the ministers, the head of the new Meloni government. My mother is also co-founder of that political party of Giorgia Meloni that is now in power. It's paradoxically they are now in power. So
they're good.
They conserve, but I don't trust those people. I don't trust the Fratelli d'Italia, Meloni. I don't trust that party. I don't trust the conservatives in Italy. They're completely fake. They're supporting the war. Continuing to give money to Zelensky is complete rubbish. They are part of this new world.
So they're no better than us here in America. Well, our American government, which keeps handing money over fist.
But it's nothing compared to in Europe. You can't talk about these things. After 10 minutes, you have somebody knocking at the door. I saw it with my own experience. There's no comparison.
That's the beautiful thing.
I talk about these things with you tonight. I know that I can go to sleep now and I'm tranquil. I don't have any paranoia. When I was living in Italy, me and my wife were paranoid that somebody would break through the door at one moment or the other, and it happened.
That is wild. Even think that somebody would go after you after things that you say, but of course not, that wouldn't happen here in America. That happens in other ways, but in your country, your home country, they would arrest you or even put you to death.
Well, they will definitely arrest you, put you in a mental asylum, fill you up with...
They'll try to kill you,
Yeah, try to kill you in various ways. I mean, today we didn't really... I wanted to touch more on the psychedelic aspect, which I hope that maybe one day we can touch on a specific episode. But you see, the thing is that the psychedelics and everything belong to a mind control experiment that was conducted also through Hollywood. There was, like I explained in my book, a specific guy who was actually giving LSD to all the big actors, and he himself was part of the military-industrial complex. His name was Alfred Matthew Hubbard, and so they actually transformed what was a conservative setup in the matter of 2 decades in the leftist hellhole is now. So by the 70s, Hollywood was already starting to become something completely different from what it used to be before. And people like John Wayne started to feel more and more out of place because they were conservative, just as other people. And like Charlton Heston, for example. they started to feel out of their, because it was becoming gradually more. And in fact, Frank Sinatra abandoned the Democratic Party in favor of the Republican Party. And here in Palm Springs, actually, with the husband of Cher, there was actually a Republican in charge, and all this happened because Sonny Bono was a guy who simply wanted to open a restaurant here, and then started his political career.
By the way, did you know that Cher is actually from El Centro, where I am?
No, so from your area.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Well, pretty wild. So regarding, just to close regarding the psychedelic was then the team that was, of course, brought to the great experiments in mind control, like Woodstock.
MK Ultra, yes.
No, I'm talking about experience in the music business.
Oh, yes, in the music business.
So in my book, I explain how they planned the whole thing with district attorneys, CIA agents, and everything for the Woodstock and the spread of LSD, and how they will basically take care of an experiment. It was an experiment. It wasn't like people think it's a happy fest. There's nothing happy about that. It's just an experiment. And Altamont was a similar experiment, and it was actually even more dangerous one because we had a human sacrifice with with a young black guy being killed by the Hells Angels while the Rolling Stones were playing music. And then we have the other, but I would say that those concepts at the end of the 60s and everything are part of this psychedelic revolution that was an alchemical transformation of our society.
That was insane, by the way. The 1960s to the 1970s, the sexual revolution.
Then there was the dark side of the Age of Aquarius, like I explained in my book, which was Charles Manson, Anton LaVey, Kenneth Tang, the birth of the OTO in 1977, becoming then a Grand Lodge, establishing itself from Berkeley. There was also, before that, of course, the Solar Lodge of the OTO, which saw also Charles Manson involved. There was the Process Church of the Final Judgment. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I hope that the people, when they read my book, they have a clear idea of how also they molded the American New Left. They used the Black Panthers of back then and all this and that, then we go to the modern emanations, the Black Lives Matter, Antifa. I mean, I would say that the LSD revolution has had some positive aspects, but you have to understand, Timothy Leary said he was just following up on the job of Aleister Crowley.
Right.
He literally said that. So
yeah, we have a clip of him.
And I met Timothy Leary in London.
Oh, did you?
I was lucky enough to meet him in London, which was kind of incredible. I met and interviewed Brian Geisen in 1983, thanks to my grandmother. Because of my grandmother, I managed to meet a lot of people, but Timothy Leary actually met through a DJ in London who basically used to give LSD and stuff around. So I guess
very cool.
LSD connection. And then there was he was called DJ Natural, I remember. He used to live in Portobello Road, I think, or somewhere. But I think that's where we met Timothy Leary. And then instead I met also William Burroughs, thanks to my grandmother, who used to work with William Burroughs as a PR. This was also incredible, but it's you can find it on the internet. Just Google Felicity Mason and William Burroughs, and you will find. In fact, there is actually a couple of citations from my grandmother's book by William Burroughs about my grandmother.
Oh, wow.
So that's stuff you can find in my newest book. I, of course, want to thank you for guesting me tonight. It's difficult always to resume, to, let's say, synthesize such a complex book of 700 pages. But one thing I can tell you for sure is that also a book that all the people who have read it up until now told me it's they read it in 4 days because they find it very entertaining.
It's a good book, yeah.
And they find the topics that I touch and the way that I touch them very revealing. So I think that the people will appreciate this. This book is to lift, I want to say this once again, the veil of illusion from the whole of this show business. That includes music, cinema, and everything that goes with it. But I also talk about frequency, sound in general, the way that we consume music, consume cinema, and everything now with the latest emanation, the streaming revolution. That is also another subject I touch in my book, which basically is the great reset of music. You will own nothing, no CDs, no vinyl, no nothing, and you will be happy. What do you have with Netflix, Spotify, all these things? Nothing. iTunes, what do you have in your pocket? A DVD, a CD, a record? Nothing. So this is to make also people understand, and there is a whole chapter in my book also dedicated to how the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab has literally worked hand in hand with the CEOs and the actors of Hollywood in the last 10 years for inspiring their woke ideology. 15 years, I would say, even 20. They started from the end of the 90s. And all this for the first time in my book, Volume 8, with the latest revelations about a world that has been hidden from everybody, but I think it's about time that we reveal it for what it is. So without the misconceptions of people like Kanye West, who maybe have a picture that is not complete. And that's why I actually talk about Kanye in this book. And I say some good things about him, as well as some criticism on some points. And so I hope that you enjoy this reading, and thank you for having me on today, Mike.
Absolutely. There's so much ground to cover here. You talked about movies and music in Hollywood, and my goodness, I just wish I could ask you more questions. I mean, we barely scratched the surface here, but I know we're.
See, but definitely,
yes,
maybe in a
do it
couple
again.
of months.
Yeah, we'll bring you back on here, of course, and we'll get further into it. I know you talk about the Antichrist in your book.
Absolutely.
And would love to talk about that here tonight, but no worries, Leo. Always a honor and pleasure to have you here on the program, and we'll do it again on the other side, my friend.
Like I said today, I think we made people understand that there is something that needs to, that the actual substance of this book is based on a foundation which is very steady, that can't be confuted, that you can actually bring this book to any skeptic and say, okay, criticize this, prove me wrong with this. Now, you might not have the same religious fixations or the same political inclinations or all the rest, but certain facts are facts. You can't contest them. They happened. And then, of course, some people will interpret that reality in a way, because if they are perverted enough to think that it's all okay, well, then at that point they are far gone into the abyss of hell, and just let them go. That's it. If they think that we can go on with a society that promotes "We Love You, Satan" among kids, or Balenciaga with spots about pedophilia, then at that point it's like we have basically end up with a very unbalanced society that is pushing more and more this woke ideology, these perversions on us, and we need to find a way to shield also our family, our children, but also the ones that are grown up, the teenagers that go to school, or the ones that go to university later on, and they find themselves brainwashed by these woke professors.
That's right.
And all this surrounded by a media and the music and the cinema and everything that they listen on campus is all crafted to have that result. So I would suggest that also parents give this book to their kids, and some have done that already in Italy, they told me. And it's working very well to make them realize certain things before it's too late and before they fall into the trap. Thank you so much, Michael.
You got it, brother. Talk to you soon. Good night. Be safe.
Good night. Thanks.
Bye-bye. And there he goes, boys and girls. That was my guest, Mr. Leo Zagami. We were talking about his book there, From the Rise of the Antichrist to the Sound of the Devil and the Great Reset. That is Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 8. Go ahead and get that wherever you can. It's going to be a great book for all. Check that out. I read a few bits of it. Sent me a little bit of a preview. I thought it was fantastic. And of course, we talked about Timothy Leary there for a minute.
Success.
Turn on, tune in, drop out.
Right.
I mean drop out of high school, drop out of college, drop out of graduate school.
Hindu chanting melded with motorcycles and rock
Drop
music.
out of everything. Yes, I remember there was a time I used to open the show saying turn on, tune in, and drop out. Always fun. And my God, I hope you guys enjoyed that one as much as I did. And I see that time is against us as always here, folks. And I do want to wish you very well, no matter where you are on this island Earth. And my God, if you want to take us on the road, please do so. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please check out iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify. Just look up the Michael Decon program, and that is where you'll find us. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us here tonight. And of course, all of you guys out there in the chat room, those of you on YouTube, and of course, those who will listen back on the replay, always great to hear you. Always great to see your emails and all that sort of jazz. And of course, those of you on Patreon, don't worry. New episodes are coming for all of you out there on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Michael Decon. And that is where gold falls from the sky. And keep those fingers crossed. Say your prayers if that helps you. Once again, thank you for pressing play. We'll do this again on the other side. Be safe out there, boys and girls, wherever you are on this island Earth. And signing off from the wastelands of California, in a desert town called El Centro. I'll see you again. Have fun, boys.
The Satanic Bible lists Baphomet as the symbol of Satan worshipped by the highest level of Freemasonry, the Templar Masons. In the Satanic rituals, it is written that Masonic orders contain the most influential men in government, and virtually every occult order has Masonic roots, and that every rite of the Nazis' Black Order employed Masonic principles. Both Satanism and Masonic rituals involve the goat, the coffin, and the death's head. Anton LaVey wrote that the Masonic rituals serve as a screening process for organized Satanism. Freemasons can also be seen making the 666 hand gesture. The Satanic Bible lists Baphomet as the symbol of Satan worshipped by the highest level of Freemasonry. The Satanic Bible lists Baphomet as the symbol of Satan worshipped by the highest level of Freemasonry, the Templar Masons. In the Satanic rituals, it is written that Masonic orders contain the most influential men in government, and virtually every occult order has Masonic roots, and that every rite of the Nazis' Black Order employed Masonic principles. Both Satanism and Masonic rituals involve the goat, the coffin, and the death's head.
Recycled.
Anton LaVey wrote,
Your only chance to survive or evacuate is to leave with us. Now, that's pretty major statement, pretty bold in terms of religion, in terms of anybody's intelligent thinking. To most people who would consider themselves intelligent beings, they'd say, well, that's absurd. What's all this doomsday stuff? You know, intelligent human beings should realize that everything has their cycle. They have their season. They have their beginning. They have their end. They have cycle.
Some time ago, the wire services and newspapers carried a story out of San Francisco describing the first satanic wedding ceremony ever performed. The pictures showed a nude woman lying on the altar behind the guest, whom you see now, the Reverend Anton Szandor LaVey, who is the founder and high priest of the First Church of Satan. Anton Szandor LaVey uses as somewhat of a credo this timeless quote: remember, evil backwards spells live. Somehow that never occurred to me.
It never occurred to me until one of my disciples brought it forth, and I imagine it's quite true with many of us.
How often do you have to shave your head to make it shiny like a devil?
I have to put Vaseline on it as well to keep it shiny. I shave it once a day. Can I give a plug?
Is that the odor you're giving off now, Vaseline?
No,
You're gonna fool me.
That's musk.
That's musk.
That's the goaty scent you smell.
For sure, it's not frankincense and myrrh. I know that. Now, what is this ring you're wearing here? Looks like it's weighing your hand down.
Well, no, it's a magical ring.
It is?
I have little children rub it, make a wish, and it comes true.
Little children come near you?
Of course. Little children and
What kind of a
animals.
wish did that ring ever make come true?
Well, I would say a great many wishes, but we won't go into them.
Now, you call yourself a satanic priest.
Yes.
Is that the opposite of God?
No, because Satan is a god, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are you then, the dirty pope or what?
Oh, I guess you could call me that if you want to say the black pope or the dirty pope or the advocate of, for example, the kingdom of night